Rot Knights are definitely a unit that came in a little bit underwhelming when their DLC came out, and just in general, to be honest, a lot of the Nurgle DLC stuff was fairly underwhelming, but today Alfredino is going to be taking them against Ryder Rohan, two very strong players, clashing with Kislev, newly nerfed with some stuff going on, and of course Nurgle. He's brought the buffed Forsaken, all Forsaken of all types got a significant HP buff. What is it, like an extra 800 something HP? Quite impactful. Nurgle ones also, given their extra Mark of Nurgle traits with a little bit of extra melee defense, poison contact effect, and extra HP even more, do make a pretty appetizing, or maybe not appetizing, that is absolutely the wrong word, but appealing, yeah, like DPS rush kind of unit, and interesting build, just all them as an infantry line, couple Nurglings in Vanguard, kind of in front of these Rot Knights. We got the Regiment of Renown on the far side, Rotting Riders, Chaos Lore of Death, actually, Nurgle Sorcerer with Kazak, newly buffed with more mass, and just generally, I forget what else was honestly in the patch notes, but a lot of Kislev stuff was nerfed, including the Kislev Warriors, their light cavalry as well. We've got a couple cavalry of the heavy type, Griffin Legion and Winged Lancers. Looks like 4 warriors. The Regiment of Renown Armored Cossars, Watchmen in the center. 3 action is Ambushers, Mother Ostankia, a single Snow Leopard. So let's see how this goes. Ryder Rohan definitely looking a little bit vulnerable to these Forsaken right now. Doesn't have a lot of great anti-infantry options outside of his cavalry. And I guess the one kind of Watchman here, but he is going to charge out with said cavalry, countercharge some of the Forsaken, at least in the center. Follow up with the Watchman, Stankia firing in as well. This unit here has their charge broken by Kazak and the Sorcerer, which means they're going to get fouled up in those Kislev Warriors, pun very much intended, but switching back to the other side, some more cycle charging from the Griffin Legion, trying to punch into various Forsaken units, but the Forsaken are just absolutely shredding these Kislev Warriors in melee for the most part. Yeah, more times also Beowulfs trying to prevent healing on the Rotting Riders, which they are currently doing. Hasn't been any healing spells cast over there, but at the very least can slow it down. Yeah, Curse the Ancient Witch over here, reducing armor and missile block chance. Interesting, for sure. Unfortunately, the Action's Ambushers are not able to fire. Rot Knights also got a mass buff, which definitely helps them penetrate lines, disrupt better. Right now, some of them you can see still a little bit caught up here as they're trying to disengage. Countercharged by the Griffin Legion. And yeah, better armor, but still not enough to stand up to that glorious charge, especially with that armor debuff active. As they rout away, yeah, that Curse of the Ancient Witch coming in clutch so far for Ryder Rohan. It's a little bit ahead on the balance of power, but of course Nurgle with their healing is definitely never out of the fight. Let's see here, a little bit of terror taking hold. The action is Ambushers. Is that actually Case that causes the terror? I guess the Rotting Riders, that's right. Yeah, Regiment of Renown here. Getting some nice terror routes going, even with By Our Blood active. That can happen sometimes, depending on how the timing of those abilities happens. But over here, these Kislev Warriors just drowning in Nurglings, doing a great job getting in on the flanks here. Alfredino showing his experience and the skill, using these Nurglings excellently on the flanks, really where they do their best to just bog units down, deal some DPS over time, not allow these units to get through, and all of a sudden Kislev starts to have some leadership issues. Fire blood wearing off, or, you know, getting terror routed through, basically. And most of their units just all of a sudden start to fall apart. Stankia really doesn't have a lot of, like, big bursts to try and swing this back, so it's not looking too promising right now, but some of those demonic units are going to start to suffer some leadership issues, and we do see some units starting to come back as well. The Snow Leopard's doing relatively good, so let's see if it can maybe get out here and try and snipe Sorcerer, but we do see its Spirit Leech dropping on a Stankia. Sorcerer charging in. And is he himself also on the Rot Beast? No, just on the horse, although he's a pretty decent combatant on the Rot Beast. It's one of those things, if you have the gold, might not be a bad option. Alfredino opting not to take it here, but as all Rot Beasts, it also had its mass buffed. And Definitely a more... I mean, it was already a pretty decent option for the Sorcerer Lord, like if you needed to potentially use it in combat, but even here, Stankia doesn't really have the armor, so it's not really mattering too much. Lack of AP on the regular Warhorse. And yeah, Stankia hitting her by our blood and getting absolutely KO'd by the Nurgle characters there. Nurglings fighting in the distance. Kind of getting killed by the Watchmen of the Night, but yeah, it's all about the Rot Knights today. Really powered up and ready to ride for Nurgle. Ready to have a grand old time for the Grandpapa. Yeah, that's going to be it. A few more units with By Our Blood trying to give up the fight, and there it is. Alfredino takes the win. Yeah, quite an interesting game, I must say. You know, basically Alfredino, I'd imagine, is just kind of experimenting a little bit here, kind of trying out the new stuff to see what works well. I believe this was a Vermin League game, if I'm not mistaken, so I guess it was for a little bit of ranking in that system. But, yeah, the Forsaken generally performed pretty well. A couple of them actually do fully pay for themselves. Yeah, like 3 of them, basically. The other 2, not quite, but still pretty good support. The Rot Knights, the Rotting Riders in particular, Regiment of Renown here, massive value, 16,000 damage dealt, 2,400 gold value. Pretty good stuff, and really excellent use of the Nurglings, like I said, especially on the flanks, just as support infantry. One of them ends up getting some pretty good value back. And then the 2 characters also, not crazy expensive. We'll have to double-check the cost on Kazg at the end of this to see, but overall pretty decent. Yeah, the Rotting Riders, though, definitely the MVPs for Nurgle. On the opposite side here, Griffin Legion managed to get some insane value. They didn't get any changes in the patch, so although a lot of things for Kislev did get nerfed, they did not. They'll still be an extremely potent tool for Kislev in pretty much all matchups. Maybe not Dwarfs, but it's not a matchup you should probably take. Anyway, yeah, the Watchmen of the Night also getting some pretty good value on them. Everything else kind of struggles to a degree. Just Action ambushers get rushed down. Pretty painful. You know, hindsight 2020, maybe just go with, I don't know, Streltsy, or not necessarily better here. I guess the armor might help a little bit against the Forsaken, but not really. Also, Kossars probably just get blended by them as well, so, I don't know, maybe actually just opting for all heavy cavalry and not really trying to go any archers. Although that does leave you very vulnerable to Kugath, so it's interesting. Nurgle actually presents some pretty big problems right now with all that. Yeah, just to check the value. Don't know. I didn't see K's loadout, but I would imagine he had basically nothing. Like, his abilities are nice to have, but not insanely impactful. The only one really that I would probably consider is... Yeah, I mean, that Corrupted Flesh, you only get that for like 25% HP, and then it disables after he gets below 75%, so that's not great. Foul Charge is pretty good, actually, if you have a lot of large units. He might have actually had that. I take that back. This is definitely one I would consider. I forgot he had this. Yeah, it removes charge bonus versus large. He might have had that there. Not sure entirely, but honestly, with good positioning, you probably don't need this. Might have not had it. Someone with Alfredino's skill probably doesn't need it. But, yeah, just generally can be good, I guess. The Sword of Filth is one. Definitely melee defense and armor is applicable to most Nurgle units who don't have the most attack or charge or whatever. But again, you could just forego all of that and take him only for the combat stats. It even still wouldn't quite have fully paid for himself in that game, just in terms of raw damage value, but still pretty good, and definitely, you know, tactically was nice to have on the field. So fairly self-sufficient with his own regeneration. So it's definitely an interesting bring now. I think Kazk is definitely someone you might actually consider, unlike before where he was basically never brought. But fun game nonetheless. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.